You're listening to the RFP Success Show with 8-time author, speaker, and CEO of the RFP Success Company, Lisa Rehurek. Tune in each episode to learn what today's capture and RFP teams are doing to increase their win percentages by up to 20, 30, and even 50%, and meet the industry trailblazers that are getting it right. Let's get started.
Welcome, everybody. You are listening to part 2 of my interview with Dave Hulsen from RFP 360. And this is a continuation of my discussion that I had with him a couple weeks ago.
Well, I want to switch gears here real quick, Dave, because I hear that you've got great employee engagement and staff satisfaction. And that's something very near and dear to me. I love the topic of this because I think that it has been spoken of a lot in the past, but companies haven't put their money where their mouth is necessarily. They like to talk about it all being important, but they never really do anything about it. So obviously, winning RFPs, there is a correlation there, right? Because if you've got a team that isn't engaged, that's going to flow over into your RFP. So what are the non-negotiables that you have when it comes to supporting your own staff members?
I would have said before 2020 that career development is a really important thing because most of the people we hired as a small company, they wanted the activity and the excitement of a small place. Yep. And so they knew they would get to do lots of different things. And so making sure, but also there's no director than VP level than whatever. I mean, it's just too flat of an organization. So making sure that somebody had some sort of career progression, whether it be new skills that they learned, certifications they gained, something like that. Last year for us, and I'm sure most everybody, was about health and safety. Mm-hmm. And I wish I could have done more, but starting in March of last year, I would just do little, we're a Slack place also. We would either do a Slack check-in or a little Zoom or Google Meets or something. We have 8 million of these tools available to us, but right. I would check in with people individually. And this only worked because we'd grown enough that there are people covering all these critical things. And so in my position as kind of the cheerleader for everybody, I had the time to contact people, but what I learned about people was fascinating. And just asking them about their health and safety, they knew it came from a good place, but people volunteered a lot of really interesting stuff. And I did not know how complex everyone's lives were. It's so easy to paint a broad brush of middle class professional employees, but what they're going through with their own families and children and aging parents and things like that was really outstanding. I learned a tremendous amount about our people. They shared a lot. And since then, we've talked a lot more about mental health specifically, mental wellness, I should say. And that has become one of our biggest things, not just because people want to win, but you don't want to burn people out. But even more than that, we were talking about, isolation. We were talking about people being overburdened, resources for parents. We set up little resource areas for parents who are trying to, I called it parents as teachers. I can't remember what I called that area, but if you had something you could put out there, people with similarly aged kids could go out there and grab some ideas. And because all of a sudden a lot of us were stuck at home, either by ourselves, which is horrible, or with a bunch of screaming little humans that needed something to do and not just turn on a movie. It's
and the teachers, all of a sudden they have to be teachers, right? I mean, I don't have kids, so I was just, it was brutal to see what they had to, it's like another full-time job piled on top of their already crazy life. Yeah.
And I'm in my house right now, and our office is technically, back open for those who are able and comfortable going. And I'm actually just recovering from my second shot today. I'm about 85% right now, but
great.
But we have to be much more intentional. And so our return to the office, air quotes, plan is much more intentional than we ever had with an office plan. But we never had an office plan before. It started with 2 people in my dining room, and then it morphed from there. And we just never thought about that. It just happened. But now we have to think about, well, what does an office mean? How do we get people together to have meaningful relationships? And while I've really enjoyed working from home and being closer to my family than ever, there's also something to be said for all the cross training, knowledge sharing, camaraderie that needs to go on. And there are people who, like myself, I found out I'm much more introverted than I thought. I hated going to business development meetings anyway, so I don't have to go to them now. But I need to be pulled back into the office, and I need that because those interactions are meaningful. And you see somebody getting coffee, and then you just have these conversations, and it's not happening over the web.
Yeah.
It's so. And I just read something the other night that was about there's something to be said too with like putting on your quote uniform, put on dress for the
For sure
job. You drive 15 minutes if you're lucky. Some people obviously, a long time, have to drive to work, an hour or so, but just that mental shift is a big deal. And I've been wearing t-shirt and walking down to the basement every day. And I never had that shift for the last year. And we need that. So, and shift into work, shift out. So.
Yeah, and it's funny, you and I had this conversation before we hit record about, okay, well, I've got barking dogs potentially over here, and you've got kids, and that's a whole new thing that we've not ever had to deal with. And it's with Zoom, we put on the top shirt, whatever it looks like, and we won't talk about pajama bottoms or shorts or whatever we have on that people can't see. But I loved your comment about kind of that camaraderie at the water cooler, air quotes, that I think a lot of companies used to frown upon to some degree, especially old school companies, right? That like, oh, you're wasting time. But that there were so many indirect benefits to that I think we're losing out on as well. And I know there's companies out there that have had to, or that have tried to do Zoom coffee. They've tried to do, all of that open office hours. And so I think there's a lot of good that's come from it, but I know I'm an extrovert. So I'm happy that things are starting to open up a little bit more and we'll be out there more. But employee engagement is such an important topic, and we could probably talk about that for an hour, right?
Oh, yeah, you bet.
Yeah. Well, congratulations to you on having such great employee engagement, and that you took the time, because I would imagine too, for your employees to get a phone call from you, the founder of the company, that's a pretty big deal. And you're just calling them one-on-one. That's a pretty special moment for probably most everybody in the company.
I think that sounds better unless you knew, that we're like 45 people and that I'm also the IT support line. So, people already had that kind of direct communication with me.
Yeah, but still, I mean,
we've always been a very flat organization, and we've grown over time. But you're right. It comes up in employee reviews. We do stay interviews. So we have an independent HR executive who does a lot of things around the company, but she also does these stay interviews. And that's one of the things that comes up that people like, that they're being asked.
Yeah.
What do they like about being here? What would happen for you to think about going somewhere else? And, some of the things we can't control, but those things that we can control, let's do it. Because as we all know, replacing somebody is super expensive.
So expensive. And honestly, I think sometimes just being asked is huge, right? Just feeling that they're being heard, I think is a big deal. Okay, so let's talk about moving forward. So obviously for the past 13 plus months, we've been learning as we go with quarantine, pandemic, all of everything that we're talking about here. But what are you keen to keep your eye on in the industry as we move forward? So what does 6 months look like? What does 12 months look like for you from an industry perspective?
As I think about 6 months from now through maybe, I guess, the end of the year, of this calendar year, we're going to be adjusting back kind of what we talked about, the hybrid office model for many. It's still only like 30 to 40% of people had the ability to work from home. So this isn't affecting everybody, but
interesting
because our software, and that was from a podcast I listened to a couple of months ago, and I forget where the data came from, but everybody in manufacturing and hospitality, well, there's a lot of stuff you can't do from home, but a lot of the RFP related work that we're seeing is stuff that you can do from a computer, obviously. So I think that there is going to be a lot more intentional sourcing because now we're taking a breath. So I'll say, like, we always used an online platform like Zoom or GoToMeeting and other options out there. But a lot of people I think, just put their credit card in and started going. I think, and I would love to hear from people at Zoom and those, the like if they got any RFPs in the past year, or if people just came out and said, we need this. Like we had one day to move from office to home environment. And so we just bought something. And now we can say, you know what? Okay, Zoom's cool, but what about Teams or Meet or whatever? Like, I think people will be more intentional. And I just use those video conferencing as an example, but I think a lot of people really scrambled for things, and now we can take a breath. So I see that as being, I think, swapping out of systems, and or maybe things weren't integrated all the way, because it was just a hurried thing. 12 months from now, though, we're settled in to whatever it is, whatever that new model is for some of the
normal.
The new normal, yeah, which impacts people differently. I mean, it has huge impacts to socioeconomic lines. We had a nice 2020 as a company, and our employees we hired people in 2020, and that's not everybody. You can't pick up the newspaper without reading lots of horrible things, and that, like, we know we were lucky. And our employees were lucky. We're professional tech workers, especially, are in a very good spot. But people will be rethinking a lot of their processes. So, for example, I don't know if I would move my legal or tax work to a different company because of this, but some of our firms kept sending us invoices via postal mail to the office. And I've always asked them to stop doing that, to email us this stuff. And one way I got their attention this year was to stop paying their bills because I didn't get them, right? Because they were going to the office. And so there are going to be, in the next 12 months, I think, again, back to, like, now I can take a break and think about things. People are going to be looking at a lot of these paper or in-person things that they did and say, do we really need to be doing it like that? Onboarding employees is a tough thing. And we got into a gray area. We actually had to send our HR person to the office or to somebody's home to verify their I-9s or whatever that is, like their documentation, because by our interpretation, you weren't allowed to just hold up your passport to the computer camera and do this. Like, how do you onboard somebody in Hawaii when you're in Kansas City? Yeah, I mean, so
right. I mean, that's the challenge anyway, right? So now we've started looking at ways to fix that. Yeah.
Yeah. We took our family to stay with some relatives in California, and it's like we said, we're working from our basement or bedroom. Why not work from a different state? And if anybody's from the IRS, I did not say that, but this called into question a lot of the things we do. And anytime I see a piece of paper now, I'm like, oh, we got to get rid of that. Or I went to my office and I was like, why do I have these whiteboards? Because I'm not spending time here every day. So I can't make my to-do list on a whiteboard because when I'm home tomorrow, I can't see it. So little things. And that will change. Now, our customers are largely in the indirect sourcing arena. So professional services, technology, that kind of stuff. They're not buying raw materials. They're not talking about global supply chains. And I have no clue what's going on with that stuff. But if you're buying professional services and technology and stuff, I mean, it is just, there's going to be a lot of level setting and changes. And so a lot of stuff can go through RFP. So.
Yeah, I agree. It's interesting. We expect to see an influx. Now, we saw a drop in RFPs in 2020. I think, again, we work mostly as state, municipal governments. And I think as they were like trying to figure out what the heck they were doing and how to shift to working from home and all of that, they just extended contracts and sole sourced and did things like that. And most of the RFPs got pulled. I mean, we've got people who submitted RFPs in April of last year and they still haven't gotten an answer. So those agencies and whatnot are still trying to figure it all out. But so we anticipate we're already coming into 2021 seeing an influx in RFPs. Then with the potential infrastructure bill that's come, that's going to start coming out later this year into 2022. I think we'll see more. And then to your point, I think people are just going to change. I think we're going to see more RFPs coming out just because they can, and they'll be used to that now. So
you mentioned, I mean, it's not just a nuance that like there were organizations that pushed a contract, that's a huge deal, right? Because there were all these people that have desktop computers at the office, and all of a sudden they couldn't go into them. And you're right, people just like, a contract got extended, and that's not always good. I mean, that's good for the incumbent, obviously, but but it's not good for all these, for the shareholders, the taxpayers, all this kind of stuff. Like, competition's a wonderful thing. Case in point, we have extreme amounts of competition on our responder side product. And what that has meant to us has been a lot of late night work, but what it means to our users is continual innovation.
Great point.
I'm not I don't even know what that economic term is, because I'm pretty, I don't know, I'll say maybe left on certain things, but that is such an amazing thing for me to see firsthand, is what competition does, how it makes us sit forward in our chairs, get to work, and get new stuff out. And whether customers leave us or come to us, whatever, there is constant change in the right direction for the right reasons. And the bad products will fall apart, and the good products will not take all, but share in the market. And that's good for everybody. So we need that. We need competition. State and local government entities need competition. We all need it.
I 100% agree with you on that. So
there's so much more behind a failed RFP than just lost revenue. Employee engagement decreases with each loss, and a Gallup survey suggests that it costs up to $10,000 in salary per employee with 15% lower profits. If you're ready to increase your win rate consistently and put our winning and repeatable strategies in place, schedule your consultation now at bit.ly/chatrfp. That's bit.ly, bit.ly/chatrfp.
I love that you all really pay attention. I think there's a lot of companies out there that kind of pay attention and they do what they have to do, but it sounds like you guys are like you said, you kind of sit up straight in your chair and lean forward and lean into that innovation that makes your company better. So that's great. We love to hear that. All right. So when somebody needs a software system to help them submit RFPs more efficiently, what is the metric, revenue or number of RFPs being submitted annually, that choosing a best fit RFP software becomes non-negotiable for their progress?
Simple answer: if you have to pass up an RFP because your capacity is reached, then that's a no-brainer. If you're lucky enough to have a team, let's say you've got 10 people in your proposal writing team, and they're always busy on stuff, a new RFP comes in and you're just like, where do we put it? Then you definitely need to either hire more people or change your process to streamline some things. That's one side. The flip side of that is if this is a couple of RFPs a year, don't think that technology is a crutch. As they define a system of people, process, and technology, back to another thing we talked about a while ago, this is a time to really think about your system in general, people, process, and technology. And so many people, myself included, reach out to a technology to solve a problem, and that is only 1/3 of the solution. So if you've got multiple people working on proposals, that means, coordinators, writers, even subject matter experts. If you have a bunch of people dipping their toe in the proposal writing process, some sort of technology is really good. Because if you're passing around a Word document or something via email, anybody who does that knows that the version control is ridiculous.
Yeah.
If you're having to check things in or out of something, and people are, checking something out and working on it, not checking it back in, that's not ideal either. So as collaborative and real time as you can get is important. So if you've got multiple people touching things, if you've got quick turnaround times where efficiency matters, if anybody, and all proposal writers are overwhelmed. So that's just part of the process. The other thing I will say, we're seeing more, part of the broader trends in the world, just decentralized teams. And so we've got a customer that does, that's come to our company meetings to talk about how they do things. And our person is like kind of the leader and the proposal writer, but then she relies on all these people from all around the world, the technology team over here in Europe and the such and such over here. And technology enables her to maintain all of that across time zones and cultural differences. So it's team structure. So a little bit, but I would say write down your people, process, and technologies that you use, and that's the first step. Like if you can document all this stuff and you say, oh, we've got it figured out. We only do 4 RFP responses a year. Well, great. Just don't call us 2 days before your response is due and you want to make it better, because that's not how technology works.
Well, and I love how you said if they've got a tight turnaround, and I'm like, I feel like they're always tight turnarounds. Even if you have plenty of time, like for us, if somebody has an 8-week window or sometimes even a 6-week, they sit on it for a couple of weeks because they think that they've got all the time in the world, and then before you know it, the time's short. So
dashboards help with that. So a lot of these tools, tie into your CRM or whatever, and I spend a lot of time I'm in our system every day, in our application every day, and I've got a bunch of tasks for a couple of RFPs we're responding to right now. And when I go to the dashboard and I see that somebody's waiting on me, even if it's 10 days out still, I see that I'm the bottleneck for a couple of responses that need my approval, or somebody needs me to write something. That public humiliation is, and I use that term jokingly, but the publicity is important. Just accountability is a big thing. Individual accountability. This goes back to my tenets of like transparency in everything you do is really important. And so sending a document to somebody and saying, can you work on these 5 responses? And then you send them a reminder and they're like, oh yeah, I'm almost finished with that. Well, what they really mean is they didn't start it yet. And so when you do bring it into, if you use some technology where they can be collaborative and you can see that they've actually not written anything or they really are close, like you can't hide from that stuff.
You can't BS that one.
Yeah.
That's good. That's good.
Public humiliation. It's not a bad thing.
That's fantastic. Well, Dave, this has been such a great conversation. Do you have any final thoughts for our listeners? Anything that we haven't covered that you want to toss out there?
I am incredibly appreciative of anybody who is in the RFP space, both on the buyer or seller side. I'm married to somebody who responds to RFPs all the time. We talk about RFPs all the time. That being said, some of my family members still don't know what an RFP is. And I say, that's great. You'll live a long and healthy life not knowing. Cool. It is not a glamorous way of doing it. It's not meant to be sexy and cool. It's meant to be objective and get the job done. And you go to the APMP or somewhere like that, and you see a bunch of people who are hardworking team player writers who I always know aren't getting the proper credit.
Always.
Business development, like salespeople are like high-fiving each other and at the bar, and I'm generalizing that obviously, but like the proposal writers and the personas that I've used for a number of years have been, the proposal coordinator who is literally herding cats. That is a thankless job. And the thankless job. And so we need more people to appreciate that. And even the subject matter experts who realize that they are the cats. Just accept it. You are the cats, and this person's job is to wrangle the knowledge out of your head, which is why technology is also important, to get that knowledge out of their head and into usable format. Anyway, I appreciate everything that proposal writers do. I also appreciate on the other side what buyers do. I hate poorly worded RFPs, poorly structured RFPs. Yeah, there are some really good ones out there. There are some people who are looking for partners, and you can tell it in their RFPs. And thank you to those people who are thoughtful in that.
Great messages, Dave. It's interesting. We worked with one of our clients on an RFP a few years back, and just the nature of how everything worked out, one of the subject matter experts had to go on site and help produce the RFP. It was in a different city. They had to, anyway, long story. After that experience, he messaged us and said, I will never miss a deadline again, because he most subject matter experts, actually most everybody outside of the proposal coordinators and managers, don't have to experience what it feels like at the tail end. and when people are missing deadlines and all of that. And so I wish I could just replicate that feeling that he was feeling at that moment, because he's like, this was hard and I will never miss a deadline again. So we need to have everybody appreciate that. I think they take it for granted. So Dave, thank you so much for being here and sharing your wisdom with our guests. I greatly appreciate this. And as always, thank you to our listeners for tuning in. You have been listening to the RFP Success Show.
This has been another episode of the RFP Success Show with Lisa Rehurek, 8-time author, speaker, and CEO of the RFP Success Company. Thank you for joining us. If you have feedback on today's episode, email us at podcast@rfpsuccess.com. No matter your business size, industry, if you have an in-house RFP team, or need outside support, the RFP Success Company helps increase RFP win ratios by 10, 20, and even 50%. Learn more at the rfpsuccesscompany.com.